We are live. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hey, how's it going?
It's been great. I just landed in Seattle, so it's been a journey last night. But yeah, I'm so excited to have you on the show. And to start the show, I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. So you grew up in Michigan, and then you work at many iconic tech companies like Cisco and Salesforce before joining the startup community. And maybe we could start with like what were some core lessons from your early tech career era that kind of shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things are the differences between a startup and an enterprise company. An enterprise company has a lot of people, a lot of processes, a lot of politics, and kind of approval chains. And I think the one thing you learn in enterprise is how do you navigate those approval chains? How do you come up with something that has value? The only problem was, when you're in enterprise, it just feels like you're just a small piece of the larger machine,
Mhm,
and that kind of weighed down on my soul. I felt like I would go home and wonder if I was really doing anything with my life. And
mhm,
for over a decade, that's how I felt at large companies. And then on a startup, it's like you flip the whole kind of equation to, hey, like everything is very consequential, everything matters. If I go on vacation, even for a week, it could like ruin the company in some cases. Like for that, that's how crazy like your role matters at a startup.
mhm,
But on the other end, there's also very little process, very little approval chains. You just have to do something that you have the instinct that is the right thing to do, and sometimes you'll mess up. And at a big corporation, you really can't mess up. The thing you do goes
mhm,
through like many waves of like eyes to make sure it doesn't mess up. And then at a startup, like you do way more stuff. You do like 10x the amount of stuff, if not
mhm,
more. And some of those things won't work out. And it's okay as long as you have a culture of kind of intellectual honesty, validation, and like people that will give you feedback. I think that's the biggest learnings from the transition from enterprise to startups.
mhm. For sure. Did you host a crypto show before this?
I did, yeah. So I created a company called RocketFuel Education. I
Mhm,
noticed like there was just a lot of like information asymmetry with what is going on behind the scenes, and actually in any industry where there's like a lot of people that are like very passionate and very smart,
mhm,
and there's like not many people knowing about it. That's like something you want to get into as an investor or as even a person that wants to start a company. That happened with AI. That happened with crypto. That happened with a lot of other kind of smaller groups as well. And so I just thought like, hey, I should just like I was talking about it all the time with in various friends chat rooms. So I might as well just create like a newsletter, create some videos, create a platform for just sharing information, and that was valuable. So people actually paid a lot of money to get on that platform, and I just did it as a side gig. I was still working at Salesforce at the time, and it was eventually making more money than my job at Salesforce. So that was kind of the crazy thing is just like people, the information asymmetry is worth a lot of money, right? And obviously that plays into, again, if you want to be an investor in the future, um, that asymmetry of knowing what's going on the ground floor before everyone else does, is like crucial to that kind of that motion, right?
for sure. I love that. Like, I feel like you're kind of like breaking the um very hard concept of like crypto to the normies. I feel like back in time it was like such a interesting era that like I feel like a lot of the crypto terminology itself, it's like you said, like just like information asymmetry, like a lot of people trying to understand stuff, but like it's like a very not many resources. Speaking of the resources, I feel like nowadays, like, we have all the AI tools at our hand to kind of like help us like study different industries. And maybe we could start with your journey joining Codium slash Windsurf, and then maybe we could talk about the day to day like as a CEO lately.
Yeah, it's an interesting story actually. I again, this is one of the things is like you find something that is super fascinating, you get your hands on it, and you play with it. And this is like what happened with crypto. I like installed a Ethereum node locally. I think I was mining Dogecoin, mining Bitcoin, mining
Mhm,
Ethereum at one point. Very my room got really hot because the GPUs would be spinning all the time. But with AI, it was kind of similar thing.
mhm,
Basically you could just go to these open source repos online and just play with these open source models. At the time, the most popular ones were like Stable Diffusion. Like Black Forest released another image model later. That was really good too. And
mhm,
then also like GPT-2 came out just a few years ago, and I was playing with that, and I was like, this is amazing. Like you used to have a kind of like very specific trained model for different classifications or sentiment analysis, right? You have to train a model every time. And then with like OpenAI, this like research lab, they figured out a way where you could just put any input and it like knows the output. And it was wrong a lot of times, but the point was that this whole thing could just understand everything that you're putting in. And then Llama 1 came out. This is kind of like, again, the first thing that really got me into AI was the image generation. And then like Sora 2 just came out, and it's amazing, by the way. But the Llama 1 model came out, it was leaked because somebody on the GitHub repo accidentally showed the BitTorrent link. I don't know if it was an accident. I think it was on purpose. But I downloaded that and I was playing with that, and I was just like, this is incredible. Like, this is definitely the future. So I knew I had to get into some AI startup. Like I just was looking for some small team, smart people, and like a use case that had a lot of value. And basically I just like the moment I realized this, I started my AI blog just to prove that, hey, I'm not like some random guy off the street. I'm actually like, getting my hands dirty to understand this stuff. I remember I had like this article where I fine-tuned like a 3 GB chat like history of like finance discussion. And then the outputs were funny because they actually matched the personalities of the people in the chat room. But anyway, my point is just I had to prove to this like other smart people that, maybe I'm dumb, but at least I'm trying really hard to understand everything. And the first thing that came up was a post from Lee Marie from Kleiner Perkins. And she said, like, here's a startup looking for their first business hire. And then I was like, all right, here's the blog post. Tell them I just started this to prove that I can do something. And got the first meeting. And then I remember the first meeting was just like, hey, Jeff, like, we don't know if you're that smart. Or like, it wasn't like that blunt. But basically, they're like, but you can give us a report of like what we can do to improve. And I remember I came back with like 3 pages of improvements and things about their website, right? And basically, like, immediately, Varun called me, the current CEO. Like, he's just like, all right, how about this? You come in, let's talk again. And then it was a very long discussion in person. And he's like, yeah, you should just come in, just work for, we do a work trial. And basically after the work trial, that's how I got into Codium at the time. And I was like the first employee that they didn't know. They were all childhood friends, and I was the first person they didn't know. And then for me, I was like, this team is incredibly smart, incredibly ambitious, and they have what it takes to build something that's crazy in this space.
For sure. I wonder, so wanted to say hi to the audience, by the way, whoever like comments. Hi, Brandon, and hi, Sri Nives. So he's your inspiration. So maybe we could start with, I guess, like, when you write the 3 pages thing to Codium, like, what were they doing back then? And then what was in the 3 pages?
Yeah, I think mainly my concern was the notion of a GPT wrapper. So back then, Codium was mainly autocomplete as you're writing code, and they just released chat. Like, basically, it's the first. This is amazing, by the way. Like, they were the first company to have a chat that you can chat with the code base. And the biggest impression I got was like, this is just a GPT wrapper. Why do I use them over Copilot? And I gave a lot of advice of like, you got to change the image that you are trying to copy Copilot. You have to like transition to something that is like your own product and your own trajectory. So I had a lot of feedback on that. And the other thing was like their community was like, I ran a community for RocketFuel, and like I had no idea who the people were in the community. So I gave a lot of advice, like, here's the people, you should like ask them who they are, you should greet them, like, here's automation to do it. It was in Discord. So a lot of these things I just put in like just like a Google Doc, literally. I'm like, here's a Google Doc. I just did a brain dump, and I do brain dumps frequently, even like today. And basically that was it. That was like a page of just a lot of stuff in terms of like, this is how I understand the business. Here's the features that you probably could do. Here's some things that maybe the public perception might think differently of what you think, and I would just reform it this way. And that's kind of like where that was in the first doc, essentially.
For sure. I wonder, so what separated them from like a GPT wrapper versus like a true, auto coding platform?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't clear back then, right? From the appearance. Later on, we had to kind of pick things that, again, like understanding the code base, understanding it better than any other platform out there. It's like we had to like make sure that message was clear. And then there was things like training it on data that was not licensed, like properly licensed data to avoid any legal scrutiny as well. And then again, like later, we were the only on-prem platform as well. So I think a lot of the a lot of when you're in an early startup, a lot of the things you have to do is differentiate yourself from anyone else on the market.
Mhm.
Going head to head with the top player in the market is very hard, right? It requires a lot of product velocity. It requires a lot of gambles too. And so our strategy, and to some extent, even today, there's some elements of this, is you want to enter the markets where they're uncontested and try to win big chunks of revenue, big chunks of mind share, and then you could try to hit the kind of big market, the harder market to go after. And I think, again, like you can play both ways. You can go after the big market and it's gonna be hard, or you can go after the easier stuff and then use that as a weapon to get into the big market, right? So that's kind of like what the focus was back then.
What would you say was the easier stuff to go enter that like big company you're not
Yeah,
doing?
the irony is the harder it is to do it, the easier it is, because the barrier of entry is so high that
Mhm.
there's just fewer players in the space, right?
Mhm.
And again, you look at the team back then; they're very very good at infrastructure, very good at just like setting up containers that are running very complex and efficient workloads. And this is again a perfect formula for doing self-hosted. And again, self-hosted back then was a nightmare to deploy, support, even get into these large corporations. And I remember me and Anshul, like just two of us, we were running like 40 pilots by ourselves, and each of these were all on-prem supported instances. So it was like insane, the
Mhm.
amount of work and like the amount of grind we had to do just to get the first customers.
For sure. What was it like to get the first customer?
Oh, it was amazing. I still tell the story where the first deal was about, I think, $900. like
Okay,
it was
that's
like it was a check. And we were just like, oh my God, someone's gonna pay for this product. Amazing. And they sent the check and they made it out to the wrong company. They made it out to Codium. And then we were actually called Exafunction. So I had to
Mhm.
call their department. I'm just like, hey, can you send another check, because
Mhm.
this is the wrong name. And like basically that was like when we were like, okay, we should have a billing system. We didn't have a billing system, right? So we had to set up like Stripe and get all the invoicing stuff to work. And that, again, that was like the very first dollars in. And
Mhm.
then it was not until we earned Anduril as our first like major customer,
Mhm.
that was a key moment. And then from then we were closing, I think, almost a deal a day, and it
Oh,
was just like, again, just the two of us,
mhm.
leading all of sales, support, sales engineering, all that stuff. And yeah, we were closing almost a deal a day, between like 10, 20 to 50K size deals. And then eventually we closed Dell, and Dell was our first 7-figure deal, and that was maybe 6 months after we were doing this motion, and we knew at that moment we should probably now hire a sales team. Like if we can close 6-figure or 7 figures in the span of 7 months, um, we can probably close like 8 figures, and then eventually 9 figures, right? So that
Mhm.
was kind of the spark that led us to grow the team.
For sure. I wonder, so like I was actually before came coming on, I listened to a bunch of like your interview as well as like Scott's interview as well as like the founder of Windsurf's interview. I feel like one of the things I think it's coherent is kind of what you're one of the things that the founder said was like um you are better to like quickly pivot onto something that like like he doesn't fear of like failure, but he has fear of like not knowing does this thing work. So
Mhm.
he said like he'd rather just like quickly testing something. Like when you find product market fit, it's like a very smooth sailing journey. So like after that, so basically you just need to like find that, like don't like afraid of like failing and stuff. So I wonder when you guys were testing things out at the beginning, um was there like an era of like a bunch of stuff that's like not working and then you finally stumble upon this? Or hope you're well. I mean, I
Yeah,
hope
I'm a
you're
little
not.
under the weather, but it happens all the time where you make a decision based off of, actually there's actually two scenarios, right? One scenario is there's obvious thing where everybody's asking you to build something and it hasn't been built yet. So this is why the self-hosted kind of product came to light, right? But then there's
Mhm.
this other situation where the market is heading towards a direction that isn't built yet, and
Mhm.
that's kind of where Windsurf came in, where it,
Mhm.
these new models, again, they were getting better at seeing multiple steps. They were getting better at understanding what a task was and executing the task, right?
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I think Claude Sonnet 3.5 where this
Mhm.
was actually possible. And
Mhm.
we were again for some extent we were very lucky to have a product that was targeting that before the technology was ready. And then the moment that came out, it was ready. So we were able to take a prompt, make a plan, create a bunch
Mhm.
of steps, and execute and keep track of what the steps are doing. That again was not possible at all prior to last about a year ago, October of last year,
Mhm.
and that changed the game for everything. That made this whole idea of having agents and having them do multiple things at once and continue to do them and keep remembering how to do it. That's the hard part. That part exploded. It made a bunch of new startups. It made a bunch of another wave of innovation, right? And I
Mhm.
think the next phase, again, like you look at pivots, like they went from GPU virtualization to on-prem coding assistant to then doing an IDE, agentic IDE. The next phase is going to be these agents, these kind of this new form factor where you are talking, you're asking an AI to do something, and it's going to many places to get it done. By the way, there's a large microphone feedback there. So I think like this is where like Devon comes into play, right, from the cognition side. And it is actually great that Windsurf doesn't have to pivot this time. Windsurf has merged into the company where it should probably pivot to, right? So now you have both form factors with Devon and Windsurf.
For sure. I wanna, by the way, Shri Venice, we're gonna address your question in a little bit. So, I want to talk about, so Anthropic just launches Cloud Sonnet 4.5,
Mhm.
and maybe we could talk about like the competitive landscape. There is the I kind of consider like the open Anthropic as like big tech now, but I guess like there is like the OGs basically, and then there is also, so yesterday I was at the LinkedIn AI in work day, and then so Microsoft was like demoing something that's like it's primarily focused on like Excel and the finance side of things, but I guess like um part of it is like Microsoft has its own like coding copilot and stuff like that. So like, and there's like the actual big tech, the OG AI, and then there is you guys and another company like Cursor is in the picture as well. So how do you think about the competitive landscape, and then how do you think about like leveraging like the existing brand of Windsurf and Cognition to kind of like power through?
Yeah. There's multiple things to talk about here too. I think first thing is let's talk about like the foundational model companies. But basically, like they are leapfrogging each other all the time. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, Anthropic has actually held the lead quite well. Like Sonnet 4 was very hard to beat, and in some sense hasn't really been beaten in the grand scheme of things, right?
Mhm.
And Sonnet 4.5, again, they've thought of like what is necessary for the next phase, the next wave of innovation. Like Sonnet 3.5, they thought about, hey, like a planner mode, a tool calling mode, executing tasks and maintaining context. These are things that they
Mhm.
thought about that wasn't very obvious yet. This
Mhm.
time it's the same thing. Sonnet 4.5, it actually writes notes down as it's doing its tasks. Like it creates files, creates readme markdown files and readmes to
Mhm.
actually jot down what's going on and what it's trying to accomplish, so that it doesn't lose context over time.
Mhm.
It is good at even looking at how much context is within its eventually like its window right now. Like if you give it like 200K or a million tokens of context, it's very aware of like when it should start thinking about things differently. Again, something that is not very inherent in other models. And it does have things like parallel tool calling, where it can like run multiple things at once. Again, that chews up tokens, it chews up context as well. But these are things again that are very necessary to do things faster too. So you have
Mhm.
this model that's just come out on Monday. Again, we're just talking about it Wednesday. That is thinking about what the next phase of agents how they should behave, and
Mhm.
giving a lot of tools for the agents that other models have not even thought about yet. But on the other hand, there are a bunch of other models coming out soon. Again, we probably can't talk about it on the show yet. And they are, I mean, they're most likely going to be better than Claude 4. Even the open source models that are coming out, even like GLM 4.6 came out yesterday, claiming to be as good as Claude 4, or if not better in some other dimensions too, right? So
Mhm.
on a foundational model side, everything is quickly catching up to each other. To
Mhm.
some extent, maybe it's because the best model comes out, everybody like kind of distills it, or does some other stuff to it. But everything is getting close. Everything is reaching parity, but they're still advancing very quickly,
Mhm.
right? And one thing that like how we're positioned is, hey, whatever the state of the art model is, Windsurf will always be serving the state-of-the-art model. So if you want to go and pour all your budget into one of the foundational model providers, you risk getting leapfrogged at some point and just not having the state-of-the-art model at a given time period, right? And I think that's one way from a competitive landscape. The differences between an app company and a model layer company, right? And then for the app layer companies, they're all just like, again, waiting to see what the next foundational model is and how they can leverage them for product features. But again, like what we want to do is, again, we want to build the best product. Obviously, we want to be better than the whatever's on the market, and we do have a lot of features coming that are going to help with doing that. But not sure if I can say too much about that either. But the one piece that from the business perspective is you also want to play into areas that people are not spending a lot of effort in, right? So the enterprise area, there's a lot of compliance stuff that we invest heavily into that kind of win over enterprise on our side versus the competitors. Like, for example, we have a FedRAMP instance. We can actually serve agencies up to IL6, which is a term that is just means very, very high security and high compliance. And nobody has that right now. It's just us, right? So we are thinking of both the product perspective of make the best product possible. We focus on something. We're spending a lot of time on the product so that these foundational model companies probably won't. And then we also spend a lot of time on the enterprise side, which is, hey, there's a lot of enterprises that they're just not able to buy a lot of these tools. Let's go sell to them as well. And of course, this two-pronged strategy hopefully acquires a large part of the market. But again, that does require execution, not just from the engineering side, but also the go-to-market side.
For sure. I wonder when it comes to like the future of engineering jobs, this is on top of my mind is because of like at the LinkedIn talk yesterday, the CEO and like everybody, like the CEO of LinkedIn was like kind of presenting and like their team was presenting the future of jobs. They're saying there's like a few new titles I raised like in the past year, which is like AI engineer, prompt engineering, head of AI, responsive AI use, architect, AI artist engineering. I don't know what that is, but I guess like.
Wait, can I ask you a question? Because you're talking about like LinkedIn CEO says this is the future.
Yeah.
When was the last time big tech has defined the future of tech?
I think like now isn't like I feel like especially Microsoft, I would say like it kind of like piloted the big tech's like movement of.
Well, no. It's a question. Like, when was the latest breakthrough from big tech that beat startups?
That's such a great question because like it is hard to like name one particular feature, but
I'd argue Copilot from Microsoft, right? Or GitHub Copilot, right? That was over 2 years ago now, right? So it's like a little bit interesting that we're kind of in this realm where like the startups are actually defining what the frontier is, right? And the startups are defining the business models too. And I think big tech is, and again, this is like maybe an innovator's dilemma, or it could be a lot of urgency in startups, or it could be a lot of the smartest people are in startups, right? But we're kind of in this phase where like if I go to like a conference IBM is hosting, I'm just like naming some old company. Obviously, they're obviously doing well, and they start saying like we think this is the future. Do you actually believe them?
I think it's more of like what other people change their title on LinkedIn. I think it's kind of like a summary of like what people have started kind of like promoting themselves on LinkedIn than like this is my understanding from like the talk, right? So I don't think they were saying like, oh, we define these are like the 5 jobs that will exist in the next 5 years. It's more of like, oh, people start calling themselves the AI engineer than engineer, I think.
No, I was just trying to make it spicy.
Okay,
again, like,
I'm aware. So
I'm just saying like big tech probably doesn't know what's going on, right? And then like also, I mean, obviously Google and stuff, they have like some very, very smart people that do. And a lot of these like companies that rely on headcount, like consultants and a lot of these like GSIs, right? They're also probably like wondering like what is going on right now? Like what is their business model is going to get kind of affected, right? Because a lot of the AI stuff is making stuff more efficient to the headcount, right? And like basically you could either output more or you could do less. I think that's a decision that every enterprise, every big company has to make right now, and that comes down to urgency and culture and eventually competition, right? So I think that's just some again. Once you mentioned like, oh, I heard this like big company, this is where things are going. I actually just I don't know if we should be listening to them right now.
Okay, I have like so like here's like my general thesis on this is like I think we live in like a Silicon Valley bubble. Like I know that we're going to talk about it if we're in like an AI bubble right now, but I feel like when we step outside like Silicon Valley, if you go back to, let's say, Michigan, like, no, like I feel like it's like less of like a, everybody working at big tech or like startup kind of culture. I think people are like, we're moving in like a way faster speed than like a lot of these like other area. And then they, even for them, I feel like using LinkedIn or using any like big tech company product is kind of like already make them more advanced than their coworker. So I think to a degree, like I definitely feel like startups have moves a lot faster, and then there's a lot more, you know, like innovation going on in terms of like technology itself. But like I think like a lot of the adoption is like still like fairly slow in like other, rural area or just like areas in general. I wouldn't say even it's like it's a perfect city, but it's just not a tech city, right? So I think like even although like the big tech looks very slow and not know what's going on, but like they do have the skill at they do have like a skill, right? So like it's like very hard for, obviously, like ChatGPT, it was like very fast, like dominating the chat space, and people started using it. But I think like the kind of consumer created product, that things may not happen to enterprise. So my point
Yeah,
was
I
like,
mean, the future is here. It is just not evenly distributed, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I think again, the reason why I bring this up is like big tech has a lot of advantages. They have capital, they have headcount, they have distribution, they have brand name, right? So a lot of things that they have. They even have other channels where people would rather partner with big tech than a smaller startup, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But the startup again has a do or die mentality. They have urgency. They have again very very smart people that understand the upside of working at a startup versus at a big tech. And this is where I think the reason is coming from, right?
Mhm.
There is that urgency. Like if we don't innovate or if we don't excel, like really move fast, we are just done. It's just over for us, right? And that goes for any startup, right?
Mhm.
Can you imagine like if I don't know, even OpenAI misses a few training runs, like
Mhm.
like they're obviously doing a bunch of training runs and experimentation, but just imagine like they lose like some key people that probably could have moved them a month ahead, right? That losing that month could be a big market share loss, right? Actually, OpenAI is probably the exception here. Maybe the other foundational model companies
Yeah,
is
yeah.
more than likely to really be existential if they miss like a month. And even look at Windsurf, like with the acquisition rumors, like that really hurt us, right? Like that made Anthropic shut off first party access at for some period of time, and even this like acquisition, this merger, it does slow things down a little bit, right? But and
Mhm.
then that is very existential. So like as any startup, if you don't move fast, you're dead. And at big tech, you could probably go on vacation for a month and it's okay, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a very different situation.
For sure. I have a question for you. So, like, okay, so let's not like, I hate to refer another big tech, but like Andrew Ning was like speaking at like Snowflake the other day, and then which was like the one that right after you speak the next day, and then so I guess like, he basically mentioned like everybody's supposed to build, and I think my biggest like question there was like, as a non-technical person, I could build my own tool, like but to what degree, like, do I need to build my own tool every day? Like, like what kind of stuff should I build to give me the unfair advantage or like the critical point that my competitor doesn't have? Like, that's like my biggest question. Is like, I'm not technical. For me to educate myself on these like coding tool that may like after 5 years, I finally learned how to use like some of the tools like perfectly. But not 5 years, but after like let's call it like spending a week or something, and like I'm finally mastering at one coding agent and like finally built something on my own and that I fix all the bugs and stuff like that. But like the next week, maybe that tool just exists in the market. I can just buy. What would be your suggestion, like as a non-technical person, like what should we actually build to like give us like the business differentiation?
I think the main thing you have to understand is the barrier of entry is very low to build some business, right?
Yeah.
And you can build a very large corporate, like very large $1 billion business, but if
Yeah.
you do, you're probably gonna run into a lot of other people that want to do the same thing, right? But if you're aiming for some very niche market that is $1 million ARR type of business, probably
Mhm.
not that many people are doing it. Like you probably find one that not a lot of people are doing, and it's probably there's probably no better time in history to
Mhm.
build a 1 million ARR business
Mhm.
and do it with vibe coding and do it with your expertise, right? So that would be my advice to non-technical founders. Find a business line that probably has a very low TAM, but very easy to acquire the TAM and build that business. And hopefully it's something that you love and hopefully something you obsess about. But if you're going to try to build the next billion-dollar company, there's going to be hundreds of other people that are going to be after you as well. And probably, again, more technical. If you're vibe coding it, there's probably people that are more technical trying to go after the billion-dollar business.
I think my question is more towards like for my own business. So like I'm like arguably a small business owner, like as a founder of a media company bootstrap. So I feel like I'm a small business owner technically. And then if I build something like in-house, like to increase my productivity or like just like automate a bunch of stuff that I'm doing, I wonder what would be your suggestion? Like, should I hunt down like a few tools and then plug them in, use like, I don't know, an AN or something, or
Well,
like,
you need to know where the revenue comes from, first of all, right?
yeah.
So where is the revenue coming from? And then you have to figure out ways to get to that faster, whether it's acquiring it from people, whether it is like distribution through like someone pays you advertisement or something that you can show on the show. Then you got to figure out what's the mechanism. Is it then you need to get more reach, or is it that you need to get better vendors coming in and then build tools to do that? Again, it depends on the business. And if your target is $1 million a year, there's probably a lot of ways to do it to get to $1 million a year, right? That's for RocketFuel Education that we got to $1 million a year just from talking about random stuff, you know. And obviously having good advice and understanding the markets is one aspect of it, but anybody could have done it. Anybody could write a newsletter, right? What's
your thought on the crypto era? Like, I feel like after, like, I mean, I was once like a LinkedIn crypto influencer. So like, I mean, I feel like in that space, it was like a lot of people pivot onto AI. And like, I wonder, like, what's your thought on like the current state of crypto? And then like, what are some stuff that are like, you still feel like you're bullish about?
Yeah, I mean, in general, crypto is just a higher beta investment to the equity markets, right? Which is very odd because people in the crypto talk about it as a hedge against inflation and other ways to justify the high valuations. But at the end of the day, crypto is just a big casino. People understand like anybody could access it. They could all drive up prices, and everyone could sell at any moment too, right? So it is one big, very liquid, very high risk, high beta, meaning like it moves very much more than relative to the S&P 500. And I think that is really all crypto is. And I think if you understand that, you can play it and you could win a lot, right? And there are some things that have product market fit. There are things like stable coins, which do solve a problem, right? It's annoying to send something via ACH, wait a business day or two. It's annoying to send money to another bank or across borders, right? So stable coins fixes all of that. And a lot of the people that talked about cryptocurrencies, it's literally in the name, currency, right? Stable coins is literally just fixes all those problems. So that's the one product in crypto that has product market fit. You could argue, sure, Bitcoin acts like gold. There's a scarce asset. You can argue that for any coin, actually. But Bitcoin is the one that's most like widely accepted. And you can hold it. And I think it'll be probably pretty well correlated with equity markets and gold. And again, as long as you understand how crypto works, you understand like, hey, the crypto is down, but like equity markets are up. And it doesn't make sense why this is the case. Like you can actually buy at a very good valuations versus buying a bad valuation is when there's a massive pump. There's a coin called Pump.Fun. Like actually, I recommended that in last week to the audience, but it's up like 20% today. And then you have to wonder like, why is it up 20%? Is it because like, hey, we're doing buybacks, or is it because there's just a lot of social media hype pumping the coin up, right? So as long as you understand all the dimensions of what moves the price of any crypto asset, you can make a lot of money. But from a product market fit perspective, it's a lot of people that are just trying to make money, right? It's probably no different than like a prediction markets website, or it's no different. Actually, prediction markets is actually a good use case for crypto because there's a regulatory arbitrage. You don't have to like get everything approved by the SEC. But anyway, there are some other pockets of product market fit, but the valuations are just way too high, right? So like when people were saying NFTs are the next thing, it's like, why is this $1 billion market? This is like a $10 to $100 million market, right? So like people just get overly kind of excited about very overly passionate about small pockets of things that should not be valued as high. And then I think the real question then is, what should the AI valuation be? And then what should and then that's a very good question. And I think it's very different than crypto because crypto valuation being $4 trillion, I can't justify the valuation there, right? There's just no way to rationalize that valuation. But like AI, like I think the total AI market cap is around 2.7 trillion, I believe, of all the startups. Obviously, I'm not counting Amazon and Google and all that stuff there. That makes a lot of sense to me. It actually does make sense. So a lot of this like hype around we're in a bubble and a lot of these startups are raising a lot of money. Obviously, not every startup is going to make it. A lot of startups are going to go to zero, but they have a lot of runway, so they might still be around for a while. That's where you can draw the relationship between like valuations, bubbles, and why crypto is valued so high versus AI and whatnot.
Okay, so I have a question on this. So like not like the crypto part, but I think more towards like, oh my God, every pumped up on. So okay, so where are so like since like I feel like I hear about this question at like almost every meetup, people are asking like if there's no junior engineer that's doing like the major coding. Oh, okay, there's two part of the question. One part is like I went to like an engineer dinner at like a YC startup, and then basically they were saying that like if you're like coding like a shitty app or something, using like no code tool is perfect because it's like fast and like it's like useful and stuff like that. But like the thing is like it is very, I guess like one part is like people are thinking like if no junior engineer that's like doing all the coding every day, like how are we going to have like senior engineer later, and where are people going to stand if they like skip all the like early stage coding era. And then the second part of the question was like people are fear of like being lazy, like people are fear like, oh, if I stop like coding, or if I start like one part the second part of the question is like some people think like if you're like building something fundamental or whatever, like a lot of times like the AI code has bugs and you have to spend more time to fix a bug than you have to just like recode everything yourself. So like people are saying the bug part is like what drives them crazy, but that doesn't apply to the shitty app according to the engineers. And then the third pillar is, I think I would just address these two questions. One is like, I guess like if you have to spend a lot of time fixing bug from a coding tool, like what are you going to do? The other part is about like,
so junior engineers, are they screwed? And do we
yeah,
do more bugs than not, right? I think those are the two questions. All
yeah.
right. So the junior engineer question is actually a very good question. And I think it relates very similarly to when SaaS products came out. So before SaaS companies came out, people had to operate a lot of infrastructure. They had to like create servers, and there had to be a database admin. There had to be a systems engineer to like manage like the storage, like storage engineer, right? There's all these like different types of engineers. And once people started bundling these things together, creating containers and then creating applications where you just, all you need to do as a company is just buy the application and then create the fields you need and manage the access, right? But before it was, again, I need a network engineer, I need a database admin, I need a systems engineer. All those jobs are gone right now, right? Like, did you need a database admin to create this like this whole platform here? No, you didn't need to do anything because all the apps are doing it automatically for you, right? So that's kind of something I'm similar in the coding world. Whereas a lot of the types of work that a junior engineer needed to do, you just simply don't need a junior engineer to do anymore. Especially a lot of like repetitive work and work that is like very well documented and understood. All that work you just wipe away, just wipe it away from existence. You don't, AI can do that now, right? And I think the real question is, then can you hire engineers that are doing the very hard work, and how do they get upskilled enough to learn that and get the experience to do that? So education has got to change. Education has got to change to create those more senior engineers from scratch, and somehow by skipping the junior engineer stuff, right? Like it's like kind of like you got to learn mathematics, but you got to learn, I don't know, linear algebra, like calculus 4 or 5. I don't know how high it goes, but then you have to like kind of whiz through arithmetic and subtraction, right? You somehow have to get those kind of people educated in college, and that just might mean like people stay in college longer because they have to learn the hard stuff, and then only then can those people get like jobs easily, right? Because right now it's very hard to get a job as a junior engineer because AI can do most of the work that a junior engineer can do. And again, that just means that A, the education system has to change, or B, these tools have to start educating the users what's going on behind the scenes and how to up level them as well, right? And I don't think any tools do that yet. There's a good product for a startup idea for somebody. And I think the other thing that we're doing at Windsurf and Cognition is actually adding features to really understand the code base. So we have features right now called like Deep Wiki, where if you hover over an item, it actually explains what's going on behind the scenes and really tries to help the user understand, right? We also have features coming out that, again, probably shouldn't announce yet, but there are features coming out that really help you understand the entire code base and how the code works and, again, what to do. So that's the first question is like, there are things that we're doing on the product side, but there are things that are needed on the education side to help with this junior engineer problem, this gap, right? Second question, regarding kind of like the bugs that kind of surface. So we are rolling out features for this too. We are catching bugs as you are writing the code. We are catching bugs after you submit PR. So there are features that can mitigate the risk of writing too much code that you don't even know what's going on and you have to fix a bunch of bugs. But I have to say, like, this is a good problem to have. I mean, before there was nobody writing the code. There was nobody even thinking of trying to create this app from scratch without knowing what to do, right? And if you look at the ratio of work, like this amount of time spent writing code versus the amount of time solving bugs, if you didn't have these tools, you wouldn't even be in the spot where you could even like solve bugs, right? Like you would probably spend 1,000 hours to write the code and then 10 hours to maybe it's probably another 1,000 hours to debug, right? And the thing is, like, these tools make it so that it's like 2 hours of writing code and it's still 1,000 hours to debug. So you're still shortening the time, as long as you're going to do the same amount of work, right? So I think it's just like misunderstood. It's like if they're creating a bunch of bugs, that means they probably shouldn't be vibe coding it. They should probably get somebody that understands the code to do it if they really want to mitigate it. But if they're creating a bunch of, like, let's say it's prototyping things or just like showing a demo or whatnot, then sure, like just create as much code as you want. And then if there's bugs, then it's probably easier to even create it from scratch, right? In some cases. But you shouldn't go to enterprise code and making very consequential changes with vibe coding and then not understanding what the changes are. Like, this is why vibe coding is not really enterprise ready yet. Like, you have very complex systems that people are just going to ask, the chatbot to like make a very, very serious change. Like that just should not be happening yet. And this is, again, why you need some senior engineers involved, or at least junior engineers that understand the code base, right? So this, again, I agree that there's a problem on both sides here.
Brandon said like coding is like 5% of the job, and you have to spend time on like review, keeping the lights on, knowing what to build, what not to build. Oh, speaking of knowing what to build, what not to build. I was listening to like Scott on like a different podcast, talking about like, people were asking like, oh, if everybody can code, there's like no kind of like premium or like no kind of like alpha and anything, like how do you differentiate stuff? And then basically he said like, the human should define like what to build, what not to build. And how do you think about that, like from like coding to product? So in the future, obviously, I think like he predicted that like it will be just like people telling the AI on like what to, like basically like their idea and the AI build it. Basically, I think that's from my understanding of the podcast. But like, I guess what's your like thought on like the future of like from code to like product?
I mean, the more specific you are of what you're trying to build, the better, right? I think the problem with most vibe coders is they don't even know what they want to build, and they give a very vague prompt, and they just kind of let the AI try to like guess what to do, right? And that's like, unfortunately, like what's happening with vibe coders and a lot of these AI tools. They just make it so easy to build that people can start building with very little idea of how to build it or what to build, right? So I agree with Scott. I mean, like the more you know what you want to build, the better, and like the better, like, you hire people that are very specific in what they want to build, right? You'll get better output, better quality, right? So I think I think it's just like this is just a generalized like AI statement, which is like the more specific you can be for the AI model, the better results you can get, right? So yeah, that's kind of like where I would stand on this topic.
For sure. I wonder. So I guess like the other question I had was like back in time when you were selling to Dell for like the 7-figure contract, like I guess like what's the difference from like selling to enterprise versus like selling to startup? And then what's a kind of like the ICP that you guys are trying to target? So the CTO or like director of engineering, or like how does a kind of like distribution of the like sales motion look like?
Yeah, I mean, enterprise is very complicated. Like, there's many layers of approval. There are a lot of like security and IT restrictions a lot of companies have, and very unique to the company as well. So some companies might like firewall all other websites. So you need mechanisms to like kind of get through them and work with the team to get those approved. There are just some companies that don't allow any data to be sent outside into the outside world at all, right? So enterprises, again, it's a complex string of things. It's working through the approval chain, getting buy-in from everybody, all the stakeholders, right? B is like ensuring success. Like it's very hard to get tens of thousands of developers using your tool and being happy with it and knowing how to use it. It's not easy. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of sessions, a lot of champions within the org to help you teach them. You teach the teacher, right? So it's very different than selling to a startup. A startup is like, let's say they have 20 to even 100 people. Like you could just give them a link to sign up, right? In some cases, you don't want to do that if it's like a very strategic customer. But we don't even run sales processes anymore for like smaller teams, because we have so much bandwidth that we need to give to enterprises to make them successful, right? So it is a very, very, very different process to sell to enterprise. Second question was, can you remind me again?
Yeah, the different. How do you like? What's the ICP like?
Oh, ICP.
What's
Yeah.
sell to,
I would say it depends. So with like Windsurf, there's a lot of people that can just touch it and use it, right? Anybody could download Windsurf today and get started right now, right? With Devon, it's actually a lot harder. Like it's very hard for us to go to 1,000 people and say everyone install Devon and use it, right? So I think the ICP is like very different in both cases. Obviously, the main ICP is the decision makers, the people that are trying to change the organizations. So that is like the CIOs, the CTOs. But when you want people to get their hands on the tool and get experience with the tool, you probably want to start with Windsurf. And that means you do want to go to the developers of the organization, get everyone to try Windsurf. And then eventually, once there's like bigger initiatives, like we have this project that's going to cost us $100 million, we could use Devon and make it $3 million, right? So but basically, like that's where like you find those use cases and you get kind of onboarding Devon through that channel. It's a very different sales process. Like you want to go through the higher level like project owners versus the developers when you sell Devon.
Kind of understand like the Devon as like the enterprise side of things, and then maybe like Windsurf is kind of like the consumer / like the consumer within the enterprise type
I wouldn't look at it that way. I would look at them as both different use cases that they're very good at. So with Devon, you want to run very long horizon tasks, like very complicated but repetitive things that could take sometimes even hours, right? You don't want to sit at your Windsurf IDE for hours and just stare at it move, right? So Windsurf, you want to do things that are like things that you can get an outcome within less than a minute. Like probably 30 seconds is the maximum people will be like have the patience for. And you want to be able to steer the AI as it's doing its thing. So with Windsurf, the AI is working on something. You can go jump in and be like, whoa. I think you're doing this wrong, right? And I think that's a very different experience than these cloud agents. So with Devon, you can do one-to-many. You can set off 5, even 10 Devons, even 100 Devons at once to work on all these things, right? And they're taking a long time, but it's fine. You can go get a cup of coffee. You can just go somewhere else, right? With Windsurf, you're pretty much one-to-one. Like there are ways to set multiple agents up within Windsurf, but ideally you're writing the code. You kind of want to sit there and guide the AI through it and be kind of like writing the code on the files. And that's, again, not something you really want to do with Devon either. And that if you take a step back, that kind of separates things into like two categories that are more obvious. So with Windsurf, you kind of want to write like all the new stuff. You want to write the new product stuff. You want to accelerate product delivery. With Devon, you kind of want to just maintain stuff or do things that are repetitive that have been done before, which means like a lot of brownfield stuff like migrations, modernization, keeping the lights on. You just want to wipe that away from the engineer's workload and give them the ability to do the product acceleration, right? And if you combine these things together, it's very powerful because you start wiping away the tech debt and then you start accelerating the product velocity. And that's like a killer combo, right? And again, very, very valuable to enterprise, but again, takes a lot of culture change and a lot of adoption and a lot of our help to make them successful.
For sure. I wonder, so like, have you ever developed like a playbook of like the GTM? I'm sure like you probably wrote a Google Doc for this.
Many times. I mean, the playbook changes too as you like, let's say you start working with partners, right? And then you start enabling their teams to sell Windsurf and Devon, right? And then you discover like a new feature comes out that changes the paradigm again. And it always does. A new feature always comes out. It's always around the corner. You have to change the playbook again because it might be meant for a different persona. You might discover something like okay, something during the onboarding doesn't make sense. Let's change the playbook again, right? So we're constantly, of course, we've created a playbook and we're constantly refining the playbook. The hard part is keeping everybody up to date on what the playbook is and also what the product newest features are, right? That is a hard thing to do with a large GTM organization.
How do you like, I guess like since like you're the CEO, like you have to, assuming you have to sell the product yourself, like what is the, I guess like the KPI for you to sell like both like Devon and Windsurf at the same time? And how do you kind of like like basically create the playbook on the fly, but also kind of educate your own like department to be like, hey, here's like what we're supposed to do today. And
Yeah, I
then
mean, sales
manager.
enablement's hard. We have a whole team to do sales enablement.
Mhm,
KPIs is obviously revenue is a top KPI. Like how
mhm,
much revenue can we drive as a part of a company? And then we're competitive of like who can hit some number first. But reality, we want to make both companies successful, right? It is one entity at the end of the day, right? And a lot of KPIs can be like, how do we cross sell? Like, what's the customer overlap? How do we get the existing customer onboarded to the other product, right? So there are other like micro KPIs within the top KPI, which is again revenue, and then
mhm,
from the business side, I'm always looking at like, how do we make sure like we are running a good business, and how do we have the velocity? What is our sales cycle time? Are we like getting stuck in any stage? And obviously,
mhm.
there's like a lot of other KPIs that we can look for, but the top one is always revenue.
Do you kind of like streamline it to the marketing people too, or like the operation people? Like, so does everybody within the department in the business department like kind of all share the revenue targets? Like everybody get a bonus when we all hit X amount of revenue, or is it just the sales team to like motivate them to sell more?
Each team has their own kind of comp plan.
Mhm,
And for the views of the KPIs, we actually have like we've even divide coded apps that people have
mhm,
their own custom views to see like A is like what is the company that we're selling to, what do their KPIs look like, what is the adoption rate, and how many seats can we get activated, right? And then
mhm,
from for example, like meetings perspective, like what are the types of meetings we're having, what's the volume of meetings, are they the correct amount of volume, right? Are we reaching to the right people within the companies, right? So every person, there's multiple orgs within a GTM organization, right? You have like sales development representatives, you have account
mhm,
executive, you have deployed engineers, you have the sales enablement, you have like sales ops, right? There's all these different organizations within GTM that have their own KPIs, that have their own reports that are important to them, that have their own tools that are important to them too, right? So it's just basically making sure each persona within the GTM org is successful and guiding them to what does success look like. And some of that will be a deal by deal basis. Some of that is the overall organization's success. So the comp plans are very different for every organization. I forgot to mention the partner orgs as well. So a lot of the partner kind of specific metrics as well, right?
mhm. I guess like when you were selling to, I guess like when you were thinking about other companies like in the space. So like I guess like one of the things that the other podcast hosts asked was kind of like for Devon, I feel like I think like basically Scott said like, you know, Windsurf is like very great at like marketing and versus like, you know, I guess like the host was like saying like Devon's product compared to like, you know, call it like Cursor or whatever of like other coding related products, like, you know, they're more low key on the marketing side, then I guess like when you're thinking about marketing in the coding landscape or like developer tool in general, what do you think is like the most effective marketing to drive revenue? Is that just like because I see these like YC demo day videos or like the YC page, it was like everybody's video is like a Netflix perfect. So what do you think actually will lead to revenue generation of like marketing a dev tool?
I mean, at the end of the day, having a very good product is what's going to be the most impactful thing.
Mhm,
So I think that should always be the priority number one, is to make Windsurf the best product out there, right?
mhm,
And I know it's really simple to say that because
mhm,
it is the hardest thing to do out of everything that you could do, is to make it the best product out there. Because the reason why I say that is because everybody is starting to do the same marketing things, and everybody's offering the same discounts on all these different services too, right?
mhm,
So the only true way to get ahead is either A, you differentiate and you reach the markets and reach the people that aren't using Windsurf yet, or it's just making a better product and that people will just switch over. And that's going to be the most impactful thing versus marketing. So again, like I think marketing again is saturated. I think everybody's kind of doing the same thing at this point. Um, I just gave Sora 2 to a bunch of my marketing team. I hope they can use it to create some awesome content. But basically, everybody's going to be doing that eventually. Everybody's going to be creating AI videos to make cool stuff, get more eyeballs, and then you're back at parity with everybody else, right? You're not going to differentiate. So marketing, again, is a moving target. It's going to be, it's constantly shifting of what's the most effective thing.
For sure. In your mind, what makes a good product?
Yeah, I think I kind of said a quote of this at another talk, which is if you could raise, and I'm not saying I will raise the price, but if you could raise the price of your product and people won't leave, that means you truly have a great product. Because a lot of people are just hunting for the lowest token kind of like costs, right? Like they just look for a product. It has like, it's free. I'm going to use this as long as I can. And in some ways, that's like not the audience you want, right? You kind of want the sticky revenue. You want people that are very, very into the product, that find the most value out of your product versus the rest. So in my mind, it's like you build a product for the target audience that for whatever price, they will buy the product because it's that good. It provides that much value, and no other product provides as much value. So they choose your product, right? And you will see this with other competitors where they will just raise the price $1,000 a user a month, and people will pay for it because it's that much value. That it does provide that much value, right? So we don't really want to get people that are just hunting for the lowest like cost per token or the most freemium or the freebie stuff, right? That is actually not the right way to look at this. The right way to look at it is, how do I provide the most value to the people that will provide the most value to us, right? And that's like the end of the story.
For sure. I love that. I want to be mindful of the time. Maybe we wrap with like a 1-minute fire round.
Sure.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
Oh boy, this is a good question. There's a lot of books that were like rapid fire, good business advice. So like Hard Thing of Hard Things, I think like Amp It Up. I think, yeah. So books like that were very efficient use of time because they're just giving very good advice and very quickly.
Wait, so what would you read every day?
What would I read every day? I mean, a lot of my time is spent with podcasts nowadays, and also newsletters that are like very high quality. So like books wise, it's like it's just basically, if it's like a general business book, like that covers a lot of topics. Those are the books I would target.
Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Who would I invite to a dinner party? It depends on like what the latest thing is. Like right now, since I'm so amazed by Sora 2, I probably get a lot of the engineers that kind of were behind that and try to understand like how it works behind the scenes. And then like before that, like Sonnet 4.5 just came out Monday. I'd be very curious of like the engineers there as well, the leaders there. Actually, I am getting dinner with a lot of them, I think, next week. But basically, it's like just really trying to understand like what they're thinking, like how they're tackling these problems. And yeah, I think that stuff fascinates me.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Actually, there was a VC named Jeff Crow, and I was working at Salesforce at the time, and he just straight up told me, "It's like, you got to get out of Salesforce. You got to be an operator," and that kind of flipped the switch in my head to join startups. So probably that guy, because it really changed the trajectory of my life.
Wait, how did the conversation happen? Did he randomly reach out to you to be like, "Hey, by the way, Jeff, leave"?
I mean, we were talking about like, potentially even like joining his firm, like just like really collaborating with him on a lot of topics. Like I was getting like lunch with him all the time, and it's like very rare for like a VC to just get lunch with you all the time, right? And I did like a big pitch of like how crypto works to his whole firm also and stuff. But I think like at the end of it, he was just like, this kid needs operating experience. So he just like was very blunt with me. It's like, listen, you need to just go out there and like actually build a company, get operating experience. And then I just like flipped. I'm like, I got to get out of big tech.
Are we in an AI bubble?
So it's a very good question. I think some startups are overvalued relative to revenue multiples, but we're not in an AI bubble yet because the AI is still advancing very quickly, which means that there will still be more demand for chips. And also the amount of revenue is still accelerating. So there's still demand for the products that AI is building. The signals that we are in and when the bubble will pop is when we hit a wall with advancements. It'll stop when the valuation or the revenue slows down, and it will pop when like there's a shortage of like capacity, whether it's from GPUs or from power or whatever. Like if we hit any wall, that's when the AI bubble pops because the acceleration slows down, right? But we are not in an AI bubble now. All the valuations make a lot of sense for like OpenAI and Anthropic. Like the trajectory is still going up, right?
Voice AI versus visual AI. Which one are you more bullish?
I mean,
Right.
it's a combination of both now. Like you look at VO3, Sora 2, they're both doing voice and images. So it's not either or anymore. It's both.
Where can we find you outside of work?
I mean, I'm traveling a lot for the next 2 months. I'll be in a lot of different countries and stuff. But yeah, you'll see me at these like events with founders and other people, just like try to spread the value to others. Hopefully, they can build good stuff too with experiences that I've encountered. Again, like I said, I'm not that smart. I'm just a guy that just like dives in headfirst on a lot of things, and hopefully that is enough to inspire others to do the same.
Thank you so much. You're so humble. I just want to say, I feel like you are very smart. It's just, I feel like you're very humble about this. And thank you so much, Jeff. And I really appreciate you. And obviously, I listened to a bunch of your talks, RL, and I think you're amazing.
Thank you for that. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Okay, let me quick.